Yeah, what are you eating? What are you eating, Jordan? I'm interested to know what Circus Strongman eats.
No, the video's recording now. You can shut the fuck up and talk about whatever else you want to talk about, not what I'm eating right now.
Hey guys, welcome to the Raw Barbell Club podcast. I am one of your hosts, Andy. We have Luke and Ash on the line, and we have a special guest host today, Jordan Biggie Steffens. He's been on more podcasts of Raw 2.0 than we've actually made almost.
Nice to be back, Andy.
Buddy Stevens.
Nice to be back.
And we have a very, very lovely guest today. In fact, that is a middle name. Deborah Acason. I didn't do that on purpose, but
it's all good. It's all good. I just gotta change my expectations for what I thought was going to happen this morning, so it's okay now.
I have no doubt it's dropped and plummeted as it's gone along. Absolutely plummeted, Deb.
The podcast has changed a lot since you were last on, Deb.
Yeah, wow, it really has.
So for those that don't know, Deb is a two-time Olympian. She competed at Athens and Beijing, and she's a five times Commonwealth Games athlete. She won silver in Manchester, gold in Melbourne, bronze in Delhi, and I think you came fourth in Glasgow?
Yeah, by 1 kilo. Thanks for bringing that one up.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. two fourth places at my last two, yeah.
Nice, Andy.
So you're probably one of the most decorated modern weightlifters that we've produced, right?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, on paper, yep.
That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it feels like a long time ago. Yeah.
When did you officially retire?
I haven't. Oh,
retired. You're still going?
Yeah. My husband keeps
that's embarrassing
me
for me. I'm just gonna leave.
Parents, bring it back.
Yeah, I'm getting a hip it's not a replacement, but it's a resurfacing done in October. And my surgeon said I'll be as good as new after that. So all these years that I was competing with a really sore hip, thinking, oh, that's just really tight muscle. It was actually bone on bone, quite serious arthritic injury. So, yeah, I don't see myself coming back competitively, but it'd be fun to just, have a bit of a lift when I coach my girls.
That's awesome. That's so good. Now,
right? What's that, sorry?
Do you coach a few lifters now? Are you talking about your...
Oh, my girls, as in my actual biological children. Yeah, so I've got a 9-year-old. She's nearly 10, and she started doing a bit of judo, but she's going to be doing a bit of lifting. I'm sort of trying to juggle the whole, do you get them in early, and then, being my child, she'll probably get sick of it or get, have tantrums or not want to listen to me. So I'm sort of thinking, give her a little bit of time to slowly introduce her to it. But she's basically a little mini me. So she's already got almost bigger quads than I do. So I think she could be pretty good. Yeah, but I just don't want to get her too early that she kind of gets over it real quick.
And for Luke, Deb was a thrower before she became a weightlifter.
Yeah, I saw. I was reading up a little bit. You're a discus thrower.
Yeah, I did all disc shot and hammer through high school. I even did javelin once at nationals. I don't think my elbow ever recovered from that, but yeah.
At nationals, just try it out at nationals.
Well, I wanted to make 10 events, so I had the 3 ages in chopper discus hammer for 9 events, and then I thought, let's do 10 because I don't think anyone's done that before. So,
why not?
Yeah, so I enjoyed that, like watching the throwing this Olympics.
It's funny, and you did some cycling at some point as well. Is that right?
Yeah, so after 2004 Athens Olympics, I had a bit of a break, and my friend / manager at the time hooked me up with Anna Mears' coach and sent me up to Rocky for about 6 months and did some training up there, and that was intense. That was like up at 4 o'clock in the morning doing a couple of hours on the bike, and then 3-4 hours in the afternoon track cycling. It was really fun. It was hard work, but yeah, it was good to try. I came 5th at nationals in the end. I stuffed up the race and didn't hear the bell and whatever. But yeah, no, it was fun. Really good time.
It's funny because a lot of people wouldn't connect those 3 sports, weightlifting, throwing and cycling. But when you step back, they're all actually power sports after a fashion. And the same attributes that can make you successful in one easily transfer across, There's powerful hips, the same mental drive, the same psychological benefits. It's it's an easy one for me to stitch together for sure. That's awesome.
And then, I did that season of rugby union, and that was really fun. A guy that I trained, Greg Holmes. I used to train with Greg Holmes for athletics out at his property out in Allera, and Yeah, you probably know Greg Holmes, most cap Reds player, played for Australia. I just remember that day I turned on the TV and saw him do the intercept in the Bledisloe Cup over in WA, and he ran like 80 metres. And, you know, he's obviously a powerful athlete too, but my coach said, oh, well, you're powerful. Why don't you have a go? And, yeah, I started off, I didn't know the rules. And I tackled some girl, and an ambulance had to come to the field to take her away. And I felt bad about that. No, I did. I felt really bad because I didn't really know how... I didn't know how to tackle properly, but I had this massive bruise. Actually, her knee got my bicep, so I had this bleeding bruise down my arm. And yeah, anyway, so
she never walked again.
Yeah, the Australian coach. I had one of the coaches call me up the next day and say, you know, do you want to be in the Australian training squad? And I said no, because I didn't know the rules. And he was like, Deb, most of the guys don't know the rules. Come on. So that was really fun. I really enjoyed that season. I played as well.
So that's Biggie. That's two now. Steph Davies was from a rugby background as well, right?
Yeah, mate. It's amazing how many sort of we get, especially obviously through your side of the country, through through New South Wales and through Queensland. But yeah, it's amazing that this crossover effect between all these sports.
Yeah.
Again, funnily enough for yourself, Luke, playing league all the years you did as a young guy, moving through into strongman and Highland games through there. So I'd love to see Deb have a crack at some Highland games with her throwing background, with her power. You know, there's just such a switchover effect between the two. Your timing and all that type of stuff. I'm sure, Deb, you haven't lost as much as you probably think you have of timing through the circle and stuff like that. And, you know, we look at guys like Scotty Martin, Aaron Neighbours, anyone who's come from a throwing background.
Even Joe Quigley was a Com Games silver medalist, I'm pretty sure, back in the early 90s, late 80s in discus as well, before he went on and become 4 times Highland Games world champion. So
100%.
And world's strongest man competitor, Australia's first world's strongest man competitor. So, yeah, power sports athletes, freaks, love it.
Yeah. And so you look at Grant Edwards, no difference, going into bobsled as well and stuff like that.
Well, he was the shot putter, rugby league, then shot put, then bobsled, then world's strongest man.
Was bobsled anything you were thinking about doing, Deb? Because obviously with your power background and stuff like that, and it's a massive crossover, especially for we were chatting about in the last podcast. A lot of the CrossFit guys and girls, Tia and James Newbury, are both attempting to make the bobsled team for Australia. Grant Edwards was in the bobsled team for Australia for a bit. Was there anything that was going down your mind?
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I did do the testing. At the QAS put a thing out about anyone that wanted to come and try out, and I think the first or maybe the only thing was like a sprint test. And so you just had to like do this sprint inside, and it wasn't very far at all. It was only like 10 or 15, 20 meters or something. Or
Jeez, I would have been my kind of distance.
Yeah, it was. I felt like maybe I should have like run a little bit and just practiced that a few times, but I kind of just turned up and was like, yeah, I'll have a go. But I think they kind of went, oh, you were close, but you know, not the best. So I was like, oh, that's fine.
Yeah, because I saw Jimmy Newbury was doing a fair bit of work down the track in preparation for that big ELO sprint work. Yeah,
he spent heaps of time down at Santos Stadium with the coaches down there. Then obviously spend time with me for the weightlifting side of things. And then he'd just spend time with guys overseas talking to them about what their thought process was. But where they did the trials was up in Queensland, not too far away from Cougar's gym, just up there. Okay. So that's where they did the trialing for bobsled, which is ironic in extremely humid, hot state. They're starting to do bobsled, you know. But let's be honest.
Haven't you seen cool run-ins?
Yeah, totally right. We'll put him in Alice Springs and give him a run there or something. But yeah, it's really interesting to see the crossover effect from sports, and especially like yourself, Deb, that have gone through as an elite thrower to, I would say, Australia's best ever female weightlifter. You know, not too many people even can come close to your resume on anything, male or female. But you're classy as hell through all these types of sports. So it's a really cool to see a big crossover effect. So we'll see you in 2022 World Highland Games Championships for sure.
Hell yeah.
You know, definitely. You know, you just have the pedigree. I reckon you tee up half the guys here. What do you reckon, Luke?
Mate, no doubt.
I'm not very tall.
Just go straight to the USA. Don't worry about the Australian scene.
Exactly right.
What are your best throws, like in discus and hammer?
Oh, so, well, I mean, just keep in mind that my best throws were when I was like 17. So I did just under 54 in 53, 70 something in discus.
Nice.
And Hammer throw was 58 or 59, something around that. Shot put was 14 something, low 14.
Yep.
Javelin doesn't matter.
I'm actually very curious about the javelin.
Seriously, wouldn't have been more than like low 30s, I reckon.
Okay.
I'm sure I tore my elbow when I did it. And once I hit myself on the head with it. So yeah, that was it.
Yeah,
I did
Jav will trash your elbows for sure if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
I think even if you do know what you're doing, none of those guys look like they're very, have healthy shoulders.
They're all held together with a lot of strapping tape. That's what I noticed. Elbow, shoulder. Yeah.
Even the other night, Old Love that won the Chinese bird that won the Jav in Tokyo. Halfway through, she's had to go off and then come back with like 4 kilometers of rock tape on her shoulder. I'm like, yep, your shoulder's had it.
Yeah. Couple jabs in there halfway through just to get no pain in there anymore. Give it a big whirl like that over the top. Yeah, but as we were just saying before, the injuries and stuff like that, Deb, have you ever suffered anything major through your career in injuries? Myself and Luke especially. Luke can hark back for more injuries than I think he actually has body parts. He's actually injured shit that most humans don't have. And in the past years, I've suffered a few myself. So I'm interested to know through your career. You said you're going into the surgery on your hip. Is there anything else that people, understanding what it takes to be elite across so many different things, what you sort of have had happen?
Yeah, look, to be honest, like for the first, probably for the majority of my weightlifting career, the only really serious injury that I had. So I had a bulging disc because I wasn't straightening my back, and I got it pretty early, and I worked on the technique. And actually, doctor said you probably never lift, but then I did a lot of planks to the point where I was holding like 100 kilos on my back for nearly a minute. So I got pretty strong through the middle, and that was never an issue ever again. That was right at the start. But pretty much at the Beijing Olympics, I had a lot of people moved in the competition. As you know, there's a lot of flurry going on at the table, and I had just finished my warm-up lift and was called for my opener. So I was absolutely knackered. I was walking on the platform like could not breathe, hadn't recovered, missed that lift, but came back, got my second lift. And then on my last lift was fatigued and was trying to equal my best. And that's where I had a minor shoulder dislocation. So I was strong enough to have the weight over my head, but basically just relaxed because I was exhausted. And so that was a partial dislocation, went back in and I had that surgery. But I've had just general tendonitis in my knees, but really apart from just a few bits and pieces of soreness here and there, I really haven't had too much. It was the one season when I played rugby that I had my major injuries. I had concussion twice, and then I played the next game at Nationals and had my ankle, had about 5 girls jump on me and had a spiral fracture. Apparently the most painful break you can have. So spiral fracture, had 6 screws and a plate put in. And that was the last game I ever played.
Where was the fracture?
Bottom of my ankle, right up, going up a fair bit. Yeah, so
Nathan Jones, Biggie, that's what he did with his bicep, with his humerus arm wrestling spiral fracture.
Yeah.
Very common upper arm injury in arm wrestling circles. If they don't know what they're doing,
because of the twist.
Talking through that range. It's awful.
Yeah, I just remember my foot being there and my whole body twisting and felt as something felt it. Yep. And then tried to get up and keep playing. And by the time the blood went down my foot, about the 3rd step, I was just beside myself. Like it was really bad. But but other than that, shoulder. I mean, I had my shoulder a slight little partial dislocation again. I was trying to train back after second baby, probably a little bit too quickly, and I didn't realize the weight went up quick and there was a bit of a bounce. And I thought I'd need shoulder surgery before my last Commonwealth Games. And again, the surgeon said, if you lift, it could just pop out at any moment. And you don't ever try to lift without that surgery. And to be honest, we couldn't afford it. We couldn't afford that surgery before Gold Coast. And I just did a heap of shoulder and back exercises. And in the end, I never had the surgery and was 4th at Gold Coast. So, what do surgeons know?
Well, they seem to just always agree. So.
Kidding. I'm totally kidding.
No, she's not.
I went to my bicep surgeon after my recent pec tear a couple of years ago, and he did reattach both my biceps. And when I went back like 6 weeks later and said, I just ruptured my pec, but I'm not going to have surgery, you should have seen his face. He was beside himself. I'm like, whatever, mate, you just want the payday.
I'll do it myself.
Just get a stapler and just pull it off.
Set of pliers and some fencing wire.
Just message Dan Macquarie. He'll be able to sort you out, Luke. He's the only other man that can go toe-to-toe with you and have any injuries.
He's still stuck in an MRI machine somewhere trying to get out of it.
It's just too damn big. Too damn big.
Do you have
There was
any,
a rupture. Yeah, no. Just going to ask about a rupture.
Go on.
And whether that's totally off. Is a rupture totally off, or is a rupture not like a partial?
Totally off. So the sternal head of the pec completely let go, and that just kind of reattached somewhere and sort of bunches when it contracts. Yeah. The clavicular head up the top is still fully attached, so I've sort of got function, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Wow.
You have any mobility restrictions from your ankle, Deb?
I did actually, coming back into it. So I was really lucky that Mike Keelan was my coach, and he's done a few years in medical science, like a medical degree. So he was really big on really finding out the details of stuff, and almost like an exercise physiologist would kind of watch me train and go, "Oh, you're twisting here and doing this," and making sure that I wasn't sort of overcompensating. But I think I probably did there for a while. It might have exasperated my hip injury. But I mean, the hip injury was a congenital hip abnormality. So like my hips are generally not in the socket properly anyway. So you can imagine 20 years of lifting and being crunched at the bottom. That's the only reason I had a long career was because I went up a weight category and had more bulk around, glutes and legs and everything. So, so when people ask about injuries, I try to say that wasn't the sport. That was really, a congenital thing plus it, plus training on top of it. So it was a few things. So I did have a period of time where I had to flat foot everything because I couldn't actually go on my toes because of my ankle. And this was actually leading into the trials for the 2008 Olympics. So I'd broken my ankle really badly the year between my Commonwealth Games gold medal and the Olympic Games. So yeah, it was touch and go how I was going to recover from that. So you can imagine doing all my training and lifting with flat feet and flat foot pulls and flat foot snatch. And then having to change back after a few months of that and having to actually go on my toes again and reach for the pull. So that was a bit of a period of time where I had to be really conscious of that. But but I think in the end it's pretty good. I just got that metal plate. So if it gets knocked, it pinches my skin because the plate's still in there. But fine otherwise.
What were your best lifts, Deb, when you were competing? I reckon I've got them in my head because I'm a bit of a weightlifting nerd like that.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure I know what they are, but I'm interested your best numbers in training and in competition because, Andy, what are your best numbers?
Why would you do this to me?
Because I'm a piece of shit like that.
My best snatch is 114 and my best clean and jerk is 140.
Okay, so
stop it.
So at the Olympics, my second attempt was the 113 snatch, which was the Australian record, which I just got at the trials. And I had the 115 over my head and it just rolled back on me. And I hate that I had that. I hate that split second where I went, it's okay, I'll get that one day. And then I never did. Anyway, so so 113 in competition was my best at the Olympics, and 140 is what I did at the trials to make the Olympics. That was a lift I tried to get at Beijing, but I missed the jerk was out in front. And then I actually in Delhi in 2010 went for 145 to try to get silver.
I remember that.
Oh yeah, man. I wish I was more angry and aggressive, but it was my last clean and jerk. I was knackered. I knew I had the bronze, and I just wish I wish I fought for it harder. I wish I'd caught the bounce and smashed my knees and just came up out of it and gave myself a chance. But didn't get it.
Who was coaching you there?
Mike was actually there. Yeah,
should have just given you.
He did try it. Yeah, I feel like looking back, he should have just gone a bit aggressive. But he was he was a great coach. But Luke Boragine was my coach at the Olympics, and in Beijing, I just remember he gave me this massive slap between my shoulder blades on my back before one of my lifts, and it stung so bad. I think I actually had blisters on my like I just remember going out going, oh, that's actually hurting so badly. It didn't affect my lifting, but I was like, oh, whoa, I didn't know he had it in him.
got your
Yeah, I did.
just got your bulging disc back because of it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was aggressive, that one.
You need a 141, Andy. So just remember that 141.
Okay, but does it count? Does it count that I? Oh, you don't count off.
Yes.
Off
No,
the
it does.
150
No, it
in
does.
training.
It does count.
Does it count?
Yeah,
Off the
good.
It
blocks.
definitely
though.
counts.
Off the blocks. What's
Yeah.
your best off the blocks? That's all I got. 150 off the blocks.
Me and Ash were actually talking about this briefly yesterday. Is like, is it even worth going off the blocks or from the hang if you're really good at it?
Yeah, not the hang. But the blocks, I feel like for me, it really made me more aggressive in the second pull. And whenever I had like the big block work going, that's where, and also my body just couldn't take such heavy training night after night from the ground. Like
that's interesting.
Yeah. So to give me the weights that I needed to get for the loading, Mike would put in a lot of, jerk from the rack and stuff off the blocks so that I still felt the 115 snatch overhead and the 150 clean, but I didn't have to, do the effort of getting off the ground. So I still did then heavy pulls separately, but it did give me a lot of confidence. So whether it was for the confidence or for the leg strength and traps and everything.
I like that.
Yeah.
So it's more about fatigue management as well as giving you the sensory feedback of lifting heavier weights.
Yeah, so even the 150, like the jerk off the blocks, I mean, I really did train like a full super when I was like 85 to 88 kilos because I did get quite tired. So my best lifts were always in, competition lifts were always in competition, and Mike would always go, all right, we'll start you on this weight, which I might have failed in training because I was so tired that once I got to competition and I had that, the crowd around and I had all that buzz, he always knew I was at least 5 kilos better off on my starting weight and my finishing weight than in training. So that was really, like, he used to always say, I used to get annoyed that like these other athletes from overseas, for example, I'd see them in training lifting massive weights before the Olympics, and then they'd get to all the big competitions, and then they'd get to the comp, and I'd think, why on earth were they 10 kilos below what they did in training? And Mike would say how when he was an athlete, he remembers, you hit these massive weights in training so that you're confident enough to get within 10 kilos. And I was like, wow, that just did my head in, because I was always counting on the comp to bring out the best in me, because I was tired in training, and, you're putting on a performance on the platform. So that's always where, I tended to produce the best, which you have to tell yourself then, instead of telling yourself, I've done more in training, I can do this. I had to tell myself, I'm tired in training, but now I've got energy, and now I'm going to feel good and lift like bigger weights and get the PBs on the platform.
Or just
I'm tapered now.
Be like the Iranian team and just like jump in at 10 kilos above anything you've ever lifted and then
That's right.
I mean, a big part of why some of these athletes are coming in underdone is also because they've had to cycle off before getting to the competitions.
Right.
Yeah, if you're not burning in coming into the competition, you're not running hot, it's sort of hard to lift the same weights you've been lifting for the last couple of months, isn't it? Like, it's like, you don't really need a tapering is good when you like your training stays the same and your external circumstances stay the same, let's just say, as like running hot and just like, okay, got to drop off that. We'll see what weights we can hit in comp.
Yeah, you got to taper off that as well. This is tapering for different things. But it's funny, we were chatting about in the other podcast about how coaches and athletes know each other so well and working with each other so well. Obviously, Deb, having the coach that knows you inside and out, and knows what you're going to be feeling like, and then knows what you're going to be like on the competition platform, obviously gives you a huge amount of confidence in their ability, but also in your own ability too, because you have such a confidence behind you. And I've had Michael coach me at competitions as well when he was an Australian coach and stuff like that. And, he does instill that confidence underneath you. I still can remember Michael at a competition in Victoria when I was quite young, and you can hear his voice quite easily over everybody else's. Just from the accent. Yeah, that's the one. That's the one. You could just hear it that little bit over everybody else's. And yeah, it's amazing. We were comparing last year with Georgia Ananides coaching him. The what were we saying? Just the connection those two have with each other. And I'm assuming that was kind of the way you felt with the coaching that you had.
Yeah, I think, when people talk about how were you in the sport for so long and achieve whatever, I just have to say, first of all, you need your support of your parents if you're that young to get there. but then you have to have your coach is absolutely everything at the start. Like he, I looked up to Mike and Amanda so much. I always was trying to, I respected Amanda so much of what she'd achieved, and I looked up to her as a young female coming through the sport. And then to then be on the par and training with them, and then to be trying to beat them and to beat her. And then, having Mike, I suppose, it was funny because every now and then when I'd question something or just say, hey, what about this? Because I did it in the way that I did it, and I fully respected if he said, no, that's fine. I don't know what I'm talking about. You know what you're talking about. So I trust you. We would always sort of be able to come to a bit of an agreement with, if I wanted to add something into the session. But I mean, even at the Gold Coast Commonwealth Games, to drop the weight that I had to drop for that competition, 13.5 kilos in less than a month. I remember him saying to me, you look so good out there. You look so good in the warm up, and, you look awesome. You look amazing. And then I won the competition, but I still had that one last lift. And I said to him, I'm going to lift that weight. Like, everyone's out there to watch me. Of course, I'm going to go out again. And so I went out and like he said to me, what do you want on the bar? And I said, 120. And he's like, no. So, and he goes, let's just do a safe lift. Let's just get the 115. And I had this moment of and he goes, you've got the gold anyway. And I'm like, oh, cool. Didn't think much of it. And then afterwards he goes, I had the ambulance there because you look so bad. Like, you looked so bad. I thought that you were going to pass out. And I was just shocked because I went, you said I looked really good and strong and fast and everything. And I believed you. And he goes, yeah, sometimes you just got to lie. So he just said how amazing and everything I looked, but he was like, I was actually packing it. Like, I was really worried. But then, this competition in Malaysia, I'd had my first child, and she was about nearly 2, I suppose. And it was sort of the build up to the next Olympics to London. And I was training for London. And that competition was sort of the first major one since having her. And I was a bit like, you just change. Everything changes when you're a parent. And I just kind of was really nervous that day. I was like, oh, what are people thinking? Like, I'm never going to be as good after having a kid. And I had this it was like self-pressure, actually. Like, no one probably cared at all. But I was a bit like, oh. And I went to the breakfast table, and he was there, and he goes, oh, how are you feeling? And I must have looked really pale because he goes, is everything all right? And I just said, I think I'm going to vomit. Like, I'm so nervous. I feel physically sick. And he just looked at me and he goes, Deb, you always feel like that. And I stopped him and was like, no, I don't. But I believed him because he's my coach. And I just went, oh yeah, I always feel like that. And then I had a great competition, but I was packing it. And that was probably, amongst the most nervous that I've ever been. But because he just looked at me and goes, Deb, you're always nervous. So it was such, and we're really good friends now. Like, we do heaps together. He helped me build the deck for the pool. So it was such a close bond, but I respected him so much. It was just, it's almost weird because he was kind of like, he wanted me to respect him, but it was like, I respected him so much that I sometimes didn't know when to speak up, but he sort of broke that down a bit so that it was, sometimes I had to prove him wrong as well. Sometimes it was a bit like, at this one competition, he goes, I'd come back from a world championship, and it was only a few days after that. And he was talking to someone else, and he was talking about this Queensland tournament that we have where you can win money. And he was talking to someone else, and he goes, oh, well, count out so-and-so because, they're not in their prime, and count out someone else because they've all injured themselves. Count out Deb because she's just come back from the world championships. And I just went, whoa. Sorry, what was that? You don't think I'm going to do well at this competition? And I think he had finally learned, you say that I can't do it, and I'm going to bloody rip that weight off the floor and do it. And so he was there going, nah, she won't do it. I came out and I beat everybody and got the money and, did a PB. And he was like, I think that's when he just totally went, yeah, you just tell her she can't do it and she's going to smash it.
We discussed this the other day, and all 4 of us here, or 5 of us, obviously, athletes, coaches. The coaching-athlete relationship is a completely unique one you don't find anywhere else in life or society. So, the coaches will often know you more intimately in certain things than partners or other family members or anything like that will, because you spend so much time, and coaches need to know things about you that really nobody else needs to know about you, but they've usually got a better sort of tune on what your psychological state is at different points as well, under duress and under pressure, and how to then make that work to their advantage. Obviously, chucking a little bit of reverse psychology or doubt towards you makes you come firing. So it's really cool to hear, actually, from an elite level person, how the coach athlete relationship works there as well. That's really cool.
Yeah, I think and it was different because Mike had a group of girls, and me and Amanda are trained together, and then there was sort of the next group where there was probably 2 or 3, and definitely if he'd have said to one other girl, you won't lift that, she'd probably walk off crying, and we're just all different in the way that you just don't know how how it would all work, and even one training session I had triple snatch to max, and I'd done like a 105 or 107 or something, and that was my PB only a little while earlier. So I did the next one, felt a bit like, oh, this is going to be hard. Got the third one over my head, and my elbow just didn't quite straighten, and it came down, it hit me on the back of the head. And it was a bit of a shock because it didn't hurt too bad, but it kind of pushed me down a bit. And I was like, oh, that was a bit, crazy. Lead up to my second Olympics, my goodness, like I don't want to get injured. So I was sort of like I don't think I took my shoes off, but I was sitting in the canteen and had the ice on my head. And I dead set expected to, Mike was sort of like, he knew that I pushed myself so much that his job ended up being just rein her back in. Don't do too much because you're going to hurt yourself. I was always the one in the gym at the end doing all the extra stuff, leaving it, late at night. So he comes into the thing and goes, oh, how are you feeling? And I was like, oh yeah, that was a bit of a shock. Yeah. And he goes, all right, we'll just have another 5 minutes before we do max triple clean and jerk. And I was like, what the hell? Like, okay. And I end up doing my best ever, triple clean jerk 130. Like I think that was my PB again for a single, like only a little while, like weeks before that. And I just thought, wow, like even just trusting him, like, and the hard thing is, sometimes I go, do I know myself better or does he? It was just a weird moment of like, wow, like that was actually really good. So
coaches can often have some clarity without the emotion there that the athlete needs that coach to cut through the mist, if you like, sometimes. And often, like, a key role of a coach, like you said, is to keep you on a leash and protect you from yourself a little bit, and then kind of unleash you at competitions and things like that. But yeah, it's a unique trust situation for sure. That's awesome.
And you see that all the way through the Olympics from different weight classes, different coaches, and you can really see the personal coaches, as we were saying, the teams that have their personal coach with them. And, it's one of those very lucky things if you do get that opportunity to have your personal coach with you. It's such a lovely thing. So, it's just, when you get that opportunity, it's great. Did you watch much of the Olympics this year, Deb, or much of the weightlifting this year?
Yeah, much as I could. I'd say I watched almost every session. So yeah, that was good. With
Which
kids
was your
in the background
favourite?
and I mean the Indonesian lady, that was intense. Like just what it meant to her, that was great.
Filipino.
Filipino, obviously. Like I said, I've had a homeschooling week with 3 girls, and oh my goodness, this is my break right now. This is their inside,
We knew what you meant. It's all Headland Diaz in the 55s. Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously now the Great British Girl in the supers, that's amazing because again you see that she was at the Gold Coast, an amazing achievement. I'm trying to think.
Emily Campbell.
Emily, yeah.
Yeah, I like that as well.
That was cool.
That was really cool. Her performance was excellent.
Yeah.
She's a machine.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, the improvement since the last couple of years of training hard for it, that's been amazing. So next year will be incredible for Birmingham. I just feel like I just love being able to, because I've been in the category so much and you don't get to follow, each athlete. The big competitions, I try to push everybody that I know to watch the entire competition because that is where the beauty of the sport is really shown. It's not just in the split second where they lift the weight. It's knowing what their best is, who they had to beat. They've missed 2 and this is their third to stay in the competition. Like the story of the competition is what I think thrills people. And when they actually, I've had so many people come up and go, oh my goodness, I did not realize that this sport, like how amazing it is, because they actually
how drama,
how much drama,
This year, Andy, you were saying the other day, and it's something in the past. Weightlifting's got so little airtime, even during the Olympics.
Yeah, we usually just get the highlights.
Yeah.
So having
the
app actually, the app actually show the full sessions, like Deb's saying, that's what has been amazing.
Yeah, it's been brilliant. Yep.
And only Australia has got that as well. Like a lot of the other countries, they don't have like the Channel 7 broadcast. So they've been like, I know America's found it really hard to watch the Olympics for weightlifting.
Oh wow. And I think I think like knowing at least who, you know, what their best is and what they're coming out on. And, you know, this is, and I mean, you know, Steiner from Beijing, you know, his story and what's happened to him and, you know, losing his wife and then coming out to do 10 kilo PB or whatever, like that is the thrill of the sport is, you know, can you take the 10 kilo extra to get the gold medal? Because if you lose it, you're in fourth, you know, like
it was
that
amazing,
sort of
but
thing.
it made me sad because I'm a massive Sugar Chef fan. So I was like,
yeah,
I wanted to get gold. I'm like, damn it, son, get off there.
And he's got his own story as well, you know, as a Russian guy being such a light super heavyweight for so long and trying so many times.
He's the modern Pizarenko, brother.
100%. You know, guys, it's amazing. And then you put those two stories together, and especially for people like us who have got that knowledge and that background knowledge of what these guys are like. And again, obviously, like yourself, Deb, you've competed against a whole lot of these up-and-coming lifters now, and you get the opportunity to see them improve. But you also know the story behind it. You also know some of their coaches behind it. So each weight class almost has their own drama and their own story to it.
Yeah.
And it's always nice when you can talk to someone that, again, has been there and done it as well, because you've lived that drama behind the scenes.
Right.
Absolutely lived it.
Yeah.
But as the athlete, you know, you sit there going, don't look at the competition, don't look what everyone else is doing. You just focus on yourself and do all that. So then you come out of it and go, oh, what happened? Oh, like, I mean, I remember seeing Ellie miss the lift and then 9 years later get the silver medal. But, you know, in that moment, you're not kind of fully part of the competition. So, and that was the biggest thing, I think, for me becoming a coach was going, oh, whoops, I need to be looking at what everyone else is doing now. And you really change absolutely everything about it. You need to be looking at, oh, what was their last warm up? That was crap. So they'll be all right. Or, you know, whatever it is. And I think that was really good for me just as a person to see what my coaches had to do in my competition all these years running after this and that. And I just sit there as an athlete going, oh yeah, I'll lift that weight. Cool. Like it's almost the easy part, as opposed to all the, you know, all the other stuff. And then being a team manager, my goodness, that's a whole nother level. And then being on the national board, that was a whole nother level.
I'm sure that wasn't stressful at all.
Not at all.
Burn it down, Deb, from the top to the bottom. Burn it down.
Oh, wow. That was an interesting 5 years, I can tell you that. I mean, I appreciate it. You know, I loved the experience that I got.
Diplomatic as hell.
Very diplomatic.
Love every bit of it. Don't you worry about that. But it is one of those things. We again chatting about how, as a coach, you get to see like the games that are played. As retiring myself as an athlete into a coaching role as well. Obviously, spending some time up in Queensland with Miles and Damo leading into Glasgow before I got hurt. I got to watch Miles do his thing. I got to watch a whole lot of because Queensland is, as most people will know if they're weightlifters, is a very, very big state for weightlifting. They have a lot of coaches and a very high level amount of athletes. And probably most of our Olympians have come from Queensland and most of our Commonwealth Games athletes. So there's a whole lot of good knowledge stuff you can sit back and watch. And I remember under 23s nationals in Sydney, which Luke happened to be there with myself. And myself and Miles had two lifters going head to head in the under 81s. And it was an opportunity for me as a coach not to just have my athletes go head to head, but to go head to head with Miles myself, because he is a fantastic coach. There's just no doubt about it. He's coached so many great athletes over so many years. And it was nice to just play that game, the coaching game behind the scenes, because that's where a lot of the drama happens as well.
Who won?
Well, you know,
it's about playing the game. It's not.
South Australia came away with a convincing win in the clean and jerks. I think it was, you know, a couple of kilos here and there, but let's not to worry about that too much. You know.
And there's also that moment of like, not just like if you make the right call in the competition and it comes off, because that's a moment, but it's also, you know, it's also, I remember coaching an athlete and having, you know, some of those top coaches come over and just acknowledge and go, good job with that. Good job with that athlete. Like they're really strong, or they've got a lot of potential, and you do the right thing with them and they'll come a long way. And just that little moment, that's so encouraging as a coach coming like up and coming as well.
Well, yeah, Miles came over. He goes, really well done. That was absolutely fantastic. And the best thing was Miles Jackson, who was my athlete at the time, was so far ahead in the clean and jerks. James Norman from James had pulled out on his last snatch. Miles was kind of going, dude, I'm just going to let the time clock run down just so Jackson gets more rest time. And I just appreciated that so much. I actually bought Miles a drink after just to say thank you on my behalf, because he didn't have to do that. He could have just gone, nah, pull him out. Darn Jackson, you've got to go right now. It was a massive show of respect. There was actually something I won't forget ever, and it was really, really cool to see because I guess Miles can't coach forever, and all the senior coaches can't coach forever. So it's almost they've got to pass it on to the next generation of guys as well.
Yeah, and that's about bettering the
really
sport.
Cool.
Yeah, that's about bettering the sport, bettering the athlete. Like, you know, as Australians, we've got to be here going, hey, we're all trying to make each other better. We want top, like, world-class athletes. Like, okay, yeah, we want to be competitive with, you know, other states. But, you know, at the end of the day, I want to see the best athlete getting the best result for Australia at the Commonwealth Games and Olympics. So that's, you know, that was a nice, you know, a good thing, you know, for him to do too.
So, Debbie making a comeback for Paris. So
that is so far away and I'm getting so old.
You might as well just stay in it until Brisbane.
Well, so my daughter will be 19 by that stage. So no pressure, but she better be at the Olympics. I know.
No pressure, but you better be
well, there. You know, I mean, and my other one's
she's saying no pressure on like which sport she chooses, but she's got to be there.
She's got 2 to choose from at the moment. So yeah, no, any sport, but she's, you know. I feel like we've got to encourage a bit. Like I'm very self-motivated. So my parents were just like, oh, good job. Like my dad's an engineer and he was doing a PhD, and then my mum was a singer and then like an elite, like very good singer, and then a teacher. And yeah, I mean, none of them watch sport ever. So like for me, it was I'm competitive with my brothers at home, and then I'm competitive at school, and I just had this inner drive to do sport all the time, and I just wanted to do stuff. And even now I sit around here going, okay, what can I do? Oh, mow the lawn. I can do that. That'd be great. But you
Press the lawnmower over your head.
Say it again.
Press the lawnmower. We had that as a gym challenge last week.
Oh, did you?
We're in lockdown. I started pressing the mower. I'm like, right, everybody get on it.
Let's go. Yeah, we have a ride on. It's really big.
Damn.
Oh, do it. Do it.
Snatch it. Beat Andy's snatch with a lawnmower.
Yeah, wow, I never thought of that.
Probably a good reason.
I think, you know, I think that, and the other thing with the coaching thing is that, you know, you've got to be got to be all these things. Like for younger kids, you've got to be a bit of a parent figure. You know, some people want a bit of a friend figure, but you've got to be like a psychologist half the time. You've got to know what makes your athlete tick. And so I think that's going to be even more complicated as I, you know, introduce my kids to the sport. Is how much to push them, because I get so frustrated when I look at her physically. I mean, she's only 9, but I look at her and go, oh my goodness, like she could be really good. Like I'm not going to, you know, say that she could be amazing, but she could actually, she's very strong. Like I have to try. When I wrestle her on the trampoline, I have to try. Otherwise she nails me.
Well, see, I mean, she's only 9, but in, you know, probably Russia or somewhere else, they'd already be talent identifying these children at that age.
That's a 150 at least by this point.
So, it's not unrealistic to sit there and go, okay, look at her biomechanics and look at her limb lengths and that. It doesn't mean you necessarily push them into an individual sport yet, but it's like, damn, down the track, there's a lot of potential there.
And you just look at the parents as well and that type of stuff. It's just one of those things where you just put all those, like you said, like contributing factors in. Sorry, Andy.
It's just like, you know, you mentioned that your parents were, you know, quite driven themselves. Like how did they foster your competitive spirit? Like maybe not in sport because they might not have been interested in sport, but how was it that you became competitive? And then like, how do you plan to, you know, translate to your own raising of your children?
Yeah, I mean, I saw my mum, what's the word? Like my mum never stops. Like so they were told they would never have children. So for 8 years, they, you know, just assumed that they wouldn't have kids. And then suddenly had 5 within like 10 years suddenly. But so I think for them, that was a bit of a shock, but it was also like, I think that, well, their beliefs, I guess, was really like making each one of us really know that we are individual, we are special. We're all going to have gifts and talents in certain areas, and you have to use those gifts. So my brother started like building cars, and you know, he's invented things, and he's a mechanic, and he's done all these electrical winding and all this sort of stuff. And so they would just give him money and support him and just go, oh, you want to buy that old wreck of a car? Great, we'll have it out the front yard. And they kind of like didn't hold on to things so tightly that we couldn't explore who we were and have free reign to basically do that. Like my brother used to take me bush bashing, and we nearly hit a cow once. Like we didn't have a windscreen. So there was stuff that like my parents kind of let us just do. My brother taught me how to drive, and you know, and then my other brother's into computers, and so he's just gone that way, and my parents encouraged that and just went, oh right, what do you need, and let's do that. And so I think it's just that they really facilitated in their own way each one of us to do really different things as best as they could help us and facilitate that. So as soon as someone came up, and my first coach ever, you know, came up and said, hey, I think you could be really good at athletics. I think you could be a good thrower because I thought you were 19, but I saw you in the competition and you're actually only 12. Can I be your coach? So it was that sort of moment of like, oh, okay, cool. Like it's just kind of these things have just come along and we've taken the opportunities. And I think that whole have a go thing, that is everything that I've spoken about as a keynote speaker for the last, you know, 18 years is have a go at it. Because then that coach said to me, look, if you want to be a good thrower, you have to be strong. And thankfully he looked up the club and took me down to Cougars. And, you know, that is where it all started for me was no, I said, no, I'm a thrower. And they just went, you know, come on, just have a comp. You'll probably do well. And I think I came first or second in the state in my first competition, and then went to nationals and came second in Australia in my second competition. So that was sort of the moment where I went, oh, I could be good at this. Great. But it was also whatever you do, go hard. Like, don't waste your talent. So I think that's what my parents have really fostered from a very early age. So even like we did a fun run at Little Athletics when I was about 8 or 9, and I was running around with my brother because he was only like a little bit older than me, like 20 months older. And every time we went past this one spot where my parents were sitting, they'd like start clapping and yelling and cheering. And I would run so fast around that part. And then I'd die and be like, oh, because, you know, obviously I'm not a long distance runner. And then we'd just be jogging, get to them, and we'd sprint past them and they'd be like, yeah. So it was almost like I wanted to do my best for them as well. So I think that's sort of where it all started.
That's awesome. That was actually going to be my question. How did you go from throwing to weightlifting? But that's already, you just answered that. So that's brilliant.
Yeah. And I mean, like when I go speak places, I sort of say how, you know, as a thrower, I thought I was doing really well. I was 14. I'd been training for like a year or two. And I did have my coach wanted his friend from the AIS to come up and have a look at me to see if I could be really good, to see if I was the, you know, potential next, you know, thrower for Australia. And he actually said, oh, look, I think you're all right, but you're way too short, so you're never going to be good at it. And within like 6 to 9 months, I'd made my first Australian team and went and competed in Poland, came third in the under-18 competition when I was 15. And that was when I went, oh my goodness, I'm on the podium. Like, this is so cool. And I got drug tested for the first time. It was so great. Because you feel like you're good enough. You're good enough to be drug tested.
Ever since.
So
everyone remembers their first time.
Yeah.
And then they're like, this gets old quickly.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And then I went down to Cougars. And I mean, you know, it was mentioned that, you know, probably physically compared to other lifters, I'm taller. Like maybe I might not be as good because I'm a bit taller than the rest. My arms are pretty long, but you know, they were really encouraging to come down and start training because they wanted more girls in the sport. And I think that was a really good thing, was that they were like, we need more girls. We really want girls. We don't have heaps, and come on, let's, you know, so even seeing Deb Acason was the first, you know, the female to clean Jack 100, and to kind of see the ones that were in front of me. And I was sort of trying to chase them down and, you know, be the next kind of wave of like, you know, elite female athletes. So that's sort of where it started. And I'm really thankful that my throwing coach knew the importance of good technique and took me to a weightlifting club instead of somewhere else. So that was the thing I'm really thankful for.
Yeah, they're obviously right about the don't be tall and have long arms for lifting, because that's really hurt Lasher.
Yeah. You just get bigger. All you do is you just put on more weight, get heavier, and you're fine.
And hey, look, there's no doubt about it. The bigger you are, the more you lift, right? Like, you know, it's one of those things where, yeah, you look at people's limb structures and stuff like that. But in saying that, Deb, you were kind of one of the earlier ones really in the driving force for Queensland to become as strong at weightlifting as they are now. I guess for myself, when I started down here in South Australia was probably one of the most dominant weightlifting states in the country for many, many years. We had lots of Commonwealth Games guys. We had lots of high-level lifters, us in Victoria. And then through people like yourself coming through, Damo, Ben Turner and guys like that, and then obviously Christy and a few others coming through, has really turned Queensland into the powerhouse of Australian weightlifting, really. And it just constantly keeps rolling over. And the good thing is they get to see lifters like yourself come from where you've come from through that system that has worked so well and just keeps going. And it's really impressive to see and really cool to see athletes like yourself giving back to that now.
Yeah, I think it was a really cool period of time there where, you know, Ben and Damo and myself and, you know, Amanda Christie and Melissa Nightingale, like a few, you know, that group that we were all world juniors together and, you know, had that, you know, those competitions. And then I think that the cool part is that you're not only in your own training group. So I was with Mike and, you know, the group with Miles and then the group with Ange and the group with all the lifters around the gym. Every time one of us was going for a PB, everyone stopped to watch. Like everyone was there to scream and yell at us to get through the lift. Like that was such an amazing like camaraderie, I think, from our, you know, it wasn't like a coach against coach or anything like that. It was, you know, and coaches would talk to each other and go, hey, like I'm trying this and what do you think? And there was so much of that, that it just fostered such, like no one cared that they were in different training groups. That was fine. Like we know we just all have our own coach but we really like yelled at each other and was like, oh my goodness, Damo just got a PB and so just got a PB. And that was such a big thing in the gym.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. It's one of the reasons why I went up there and trained and moved from South Australia and trained up there because one, I had the opportunity to work with Damo because we were both prepping for the same thing and they were looking to take 2 supers at the time, and you know it was here. There just wasn't there was just nothing to build off of. There was no, you know, I'd just come back from strongman back into weightlifting and yeah, you know, Miles was like, you should come up here and train. This is the place to train. We'll get you training with Damo and you'll both push each other. And yeah, as soon as I got to Cougars, it was just such a lovely feeling and just, you know, and what just a group of people to come through. But again, you see the pictures and photos on the wall, you see the names on the wall, you see your name on the wall, you see many other lifters' names on the walls, Damo's name, so many more through the years, Anthony Martin and guys like that who have been up there for so long. It's really, really cool. It's really, really cool. And you can just see why they are where they are today.
Yeah, no, they've done a good job. Mike founded Cougars too, so that's really cool. I mean, that meant a lot, you know, that you know, he was sort of in there and, you know, particularly pushing women's sport, like you know, really, getting the young girls into it, and because we were already there, then the younger ones weren't afraid to come in and try weightlifting, you know, the sport that's so dangerous. They were willing to have a go and train really hard. So yeah, it takes a lot. So, you know, in amongst your parents being supportive, your family and friends, you know, encouraging you, you know, and your coach, it's, you know, the club where you are is really important in that environment.
You came through at the right age too, because which was, you know, just purely chance, obviously, but like women's weightlifting becoming an Olympic sport in 2000, was it? Was it Sydney first?
Yeah.
I mean, talk about ideal timing to be shifting across from throwing into weightlifting. That was excellent timing on your part.
Yeah, I'd like to take no credit for that. Yeah.
well done there.
Yeah, thanks. No, but
perfectly timed everything.
someone said something about you missed Sydney. Miss Sydney 2000. I was like, I was like 14 or 15, I think. I had my first competition when I was 14 and a half, and I felt so young, but my improvement, you know, I was like, I've been in the sport for like, you know, less than a year, but to that improvement from my 15-year-old through to my 19-year-old was such a, you know, I snatched, you know, double what I snatched at my first competition within a couple of years. So I think that improvement through those years were really important. And, you know, I say how you need all that, you know, you need a supportive family and all that. There's probably a lot of people that have done what they've done without a supportive family. And, you know, every time I would thank Mike privately and publicly and just say, I would never have achieved this, he always goes, oh, whatever, Deb, you would have achieved it no matter who was your coach, because that's just who you are. And I hate that, but it's a compliment. But I feel like I want to give him the acknowledgement that he deserves, because he, you know, he worked in government and would go to work early to leave early so that he could be at the gym for us 5 nights a week plus Saturday morning. Like, you know, he put everything into it for $0 over, you know, more than 10 years for us. So that's coaching. Coaching is not a job. It's it's a job.
Life.
It's a lifestyle. Yeah, it's a calling. And if you can't accept those conditions, then coaching's not for you.
100%. 100%. Did you watch
Andy? I want a pay rise.
My audio has gone out for some reason. I can't hear anything anyone's saying.
Yeah, did you watch the super heavyweights at the Olympics this year?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, the super heavyweight females. What did you think of the whole competition?
So it was an interesting one. Now I'm trying to think. Gold, China.
Yep.
Silver.
Lee Wen.
Yep. Lee Wen. Silver, Great Britain.
Emily. Yep, bronze.
Sarah Roberts.
Sarah, that's it. Now, was Sarah the one at the World Championships that got silver?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, I'm trying to piece them together.
She's won bronze at the last Olympics too, I think, right?
Yeah,
She's got back-to-back bronze, I think.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, sorry, Sarah came, back-to-back bronze, that's it.
Yeah, so an interesting competition. I wasn't sure which session I was watching there for a while, but that was...
What do you mean?
Oh, well, we're talking about the first transgender athlete.
Yeah, so that's an interesting topic to bring up, Deborah.
Thanks for the prompt, Jordan.
Mate, I was
sitting there going, which one of us is going to start this?
Yeah, look, okay. Yeah.
So this is something that you have spoke out about before. And last week we did a podcast where we talked at length about male to female transgender athletes competing in female sport. And Jordan brought up a really good point, is that, we're sitting here for male athletes and coaches talking about it. We haven't really ever felt what it feels like to compete against athletes of this nature. And we haven't also had to deal with the repercussions of speaking about these things in public before as a female athlete. And then he had a great idea of inviting you on the show.
Nice.
So we're just gonna shove it all on you and ask you basically what your because have you been in a session with Laurel before?
Yes, at the 2018 Commonwealth Games, yeah. So I mean, Laurel was injured in that competition, so I had an elbow injury, and I'm not sure when Laurel then competed again after that. I think it was quite a long come back from the injury. I think the biggest thing is that this has to be something that's talked about. It has to be something that people aren't embarrassed to talk about or ashamed to talk about or worried to talk about, because it is obviously here. It's here to stay, and we need to have solutions for this for all parties concerned. So, I guess I feel like I'm in a situation where I can talk about the topic from many different angles, from a former elite athlete that competed against a transgender athlete, from a mother's perspective. I have 3 daughters. From, a national sport perspective, where I know what it feels like to talk about strategic direction on a board for a national sport. I'm a coach as well. I've referee, from all these different angles. I feel like there's lots of different perspective on the issue, and there's emotional perspective, there's scientific perspective, there's issues of fairness, there's issues of, all these different things. And I think a lot of people come to it very emotively, and I feel like it's really better to be discussing the facts as well as the repercussions for our future athletes as well. Sorry, were you going to say something?
I was going to say, Deb, that was exactly the same conversation we were having. And it was one of those things where we wanted to just hear the thoughts and processes of someone like yourself, because we can give our thoughts and processes on it all. But it's being comfortable talking about these things, not making it taboo, not stepping on eggshells. Luke, you said it the other day, where people are so scared to voice their opinion on something like this because they're scared of the repercussions that come in towards it, when there's always room for healthy discussion. There's no need for someone to come out and be harmful and horrible about the situation. It's about healthy discussions to disagree with each other, because the world would be a pretty shitty place if we all agreed with each other or all disagreed with each other, So it's one of those things where I think people, before you get into your answer, obviously, Deb, is people need to understand that this is a healthy conversation, constructive conversation, good for everybody conversation, good for athletes that want to become transgender, good for the athletes, male, female, whoever it is. It's good constructive stuff to help each other, to be confident to talk to each other, because I feel like people are just so scared more than anything else. And again, before you start, Deborah, we just really appreciate having you on to have this conversation too, because it's a very big thing, a massive thing for someone like yourself.
Yeah, thanks.
It's also, I think it is important to also note that as part of the press rules that press were given at the Olympics, that they were giving very specific rules on what they can and cannot ask about regarding this topic. So it's important to note that as much as it's nice for us to remove a taboo from a topic when the actual organization that is running an event censors things. That also makes it hard for athletes and press to, to find out more, to ask, intelligent questions about the what is a pretty momentous occasion in the Olympics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, there's been a lot of talk about what athletes, myself and a New Zealander athlete, a female competitor, was allowed to say before the Commonwealth Games. A lot of talk about, what you can say and what you can't say as an athlete in the competition. And when people go, oh, why didn't you get yourself out of the competition if you didn't think it was fair? And I mean, I just keep trying to explain to people that after 20 years in my sport, I finally got the chance to compete at my home Commonwealth Games, at the Gold Coast with all my family, with my 2 daughters watching, with, family from Canada, Japan, all around the world. I was not going to step out of that competition. Like that's just the next level, I feel like, of unfairness. But anyway, so I was reading an article, like I read a lot about this last year and the year before, and then there was another one on The Conversation that really gives an interesting perspective. And there was a few things that, that popped into my mind. One thing was that the article mentioned Americans specifically wouldn't care about transgender athletes unless they were winning all the time. And for me, I don't think that's the situation. Like it's not about whether the athletes are always beating other women in the sport. And for me, there's a perspective of the fairness of the competition for female athletes and the fairness for future athletes that might not want to ever compete in a sport because of their experiences that they've had. So for my daughter who does judo, she had her first matches and was against a girl that was bigger and stronger than her, and she had only just started, and that was fine. And then there was an Olaf athlete, so she competed against a boy who had never done up his belt before. He'd never had an outfit on. It was his first ever experience in judo, and he beat my daughter, who weighed a little bit more than him, but it looked to be like just pure natural strength, really. Now that's just one thing that me as a mother, I look at that and go, that's interesting. I'll take note of that. So it was interesting as well for me. Thank you. My coffee is here. The IOC, thank you. The IOC said in July that their rules on transgender are not fit for purpose. So they don't actually fit the occasion, and that they are going to be changed. So that was said prior to the Olympics, and they expect that in another month or so, new rules are going to come out. So their comments were that, my comment is as well that a lot of sports have gone along with what the IOC rules are because they said, well, they're the higher body. So a bit like in law, you have your district, your regional, whatever, and you just refer to the higher one because that's their rules. So now they're saying we're going to change that, and the IOC is saying that we're going to give it back to the national sports to decide the rules to some extent. So they've said that the science has moved on from where it was a couple of years ago when they came up with the rules, where my understanding was, and I read a bit about the history, where particularly Chand, the Indian, was she 400-meter runner, and Semenya. So there was intersex athletes, and the panel wanted to come up with a way to, handle this situation where it's the intersex athlete born with both basically, and have higher testosterone levels. So how do we deal with this situation? And my understanding was that the transgender topic was then, and the issue was put together with that, with an intersex athlete, and that's sort of where the guidelines and the IOC rules started with that. So they've said that the change in the IOC medical, the science has moved on, but also that it would also focus on safety as well as fairness. So it was basically saying, should we talk about, is the Olympic rules, should the framework for transgender be about fairness and inclusion, or should it be about safety and elite sport? So it's sort of saying it depends on, like I think the quote actually says, it depends on what you're going to put as a priority. So I feel like the elite Olympic weightlifting is not about a priority in agendas and motivation. It's actually about the best sporting talent. It's about the best physical abilities. So the 10 nanomoles per litre for 12 months apparently is no longer backed by science, and that now it can be brought down to as low as 7 for a transgender athlete. But that also, whether that's the issue or not, this is what the IOC is saying, whether that's the issue or not, it's almost impossible to agree on anyway, and it might be irrelevant. So I'm a bit confused with what the IOC are actually saying here. So now they're saying, like I said, it's not a one size fits all. The national sports should basically deal with the issue now. So it says there's some research, but it depends on whether you're coming at it from the view of inclusion as a first priority or absolute fairness to the nth degree as being the priority. And again, for me as an Olympian, the Olympics is about the fairness, the equal playing field. And like you said, Andy, 2000 Olympics was the first Olympics for women. So we've had 5 Olympics, Sydney, Athens, Beijing, London, Rio, and now the 6th Olympics for women who have fought for the right to have equal sports. So it depends on whether you're talking about inclusion or not. So that's different, like the elite sporting level, inclusion and that is different, I feel, to grassroots sport. So it's not the same when you spend your whole life training towards an event and get to the top, where about, the high performance and fairness in competition. There's also like these studies that basically after 12 months, there's a 5% decline in lean mass and strength over that 12 months from lower testosterone, 5%. So on average, 1/10 of that advantage is removed. So guys from this one particular study anyway, guys achieve 20 to 100% more than a female. So if you're taking out 5% of that, it's really only about 1/10 of the advantage is removed. So again, that doesn't take it down to an even level. Obviously, I have concern for male to female athletes, transgender athletes who are really, there's a lot of risk involved with lower testosterone. I mean, you go to a medical GP and if you're a male and you have low testosterone, there's serious medical conditions that can happen. So, if there's stress about being included or if there's worry about, being included in sports as a transgender athlete, if your testosterone is being lowered to the extent, there's serious risk of fragile bones, increased fatigue, sleep disturbance, emotional changes, depression, low motivation, self-confidence. So there's all those other issues as well for that athlete that, should be considered. The weightlifting records on average are 25 to 35% better for men than women. So there's significant, we all know the differences, and there's a lot that occur in puberty. And on an average, these numbers, I was trying to look at the nanobol per litre, but yeah, like the average male is 9.2 to 31 and the female is 0.3 up to 2.4.
I'm pretty sure I think they said even 36 months after starting the sort of process of hormone restriction, like they're still like 4 times more testosterone than like women who have been women their entire lives.
Even, so then the other outside factors to the testosterone is that, as a male, it's obvious. I feel like I'm just repeating what everyone else knows, but you're talking about, your size, your muscle mass, your myonuclei within your muscle increases in number irreversibly. So you get more little tiny, muscle strands and everything that never go back again once you've had testosterone, which is why, female athletes, if they take testosterone to achieve better results, that's why they do it. It's irreversible advantage. Then you're also talking about your heart and your lungs and all that, all that stuff. Like I train for so long and I try and wrestle my husband and he flogs me and he went to the gym a couple of times. Like it's ridiculous. I grew up with brothers. I was competitive in sport with boys at school my whole life. I still was competitive because I was a bit bigger and stronger than some of the boys. So I felt like I could match it with them and it was all right. But, as a female, you've got that innate, like, the boys are bigger and stronger. And then, you try and just do your best that you can. And hopefully technique and other things can help improve it. What else? So you got all those physical advantages that we know of, all the effects that it can have on the transgender athlete. I had to be gender tested when I was a high schooler. So I had the swab of my mouth and I had to have a letter to confirm that I was a biological female. So that at the World Juniors in 2000 and what year was that? 2001 or 2003, around that sort of time. I was always the lightest one, generally a lighter in my weight category. And I had a Ukrainian girl that was 163 kilos and another female athlete that was like 100 and whatever kilos. So they tested positive 9 years later. And I moved up from my 8th spot to 6th spot 9 years after the fact. That's just something that I'll never get back, is being 6th at the Olympics at the time. I feel like it was a bit concerning that the whole transgender topic and everything was put very, very quickly, I think, into the same guidelines and everything as an intersex athlete before, as I've said, science has moved on. Well, you know, I'm curious about the process that happened at the start, because we didn't know. It's all these sort of new scientific facts that have come about in the last however long about the scientific benefit of a male athlete over a female athlete. It was really interesting reading a lot of articles from some of the transgender panelists that actually helped write the guidelines. There was a few male to female transgender athletes who were like marathon and long distance runners who were absolutely amazed, astounded at their physical abilities now as with their testosterone so low compared to what they could do as a male. And they could not believe the difference. They couldn't go hard. They couldn't recover. They couldn't. So then you've got that, but then you've got a female athlete who then you have a period cycle where, for myself, there was at least 3 days a month where I could not go heavy, and that my body was affected even a day or two outside of that, where I knew if I went heavy, I could have injured myself because of the elasticity, in the muscles during that time of the month. So I remember I calculated up how many weeks that would have been in my career where I couldn't train heavy. So if you're talking about a week a month that it's affected, you're talking 12 weeks a year. That's a full cycle of training. And I know what it felt like to be a teenage athlete and be improving through my, the bursts of my, teenage years and hormone levels. Then the difference of what I felt mentally and physically when I was pregnant, after I gave birth, and when I came back again. And it was amazing to see. Now I've done that 3 times, but to see and feel the changes, and even breastfeeding my daughter, how different it felt when I stopped and I was preparing for the Glasgow Commonwealth Games. I actually remember within 2 weeks just feeling like I could jump out of my skin because I had so much extra energy just from that. So the hormonal thing is really, as I've gotten older, made me realize what a significant difference it is as an elite female lifter compared to, a transgender athlete. So, there's been in this article, like I feel like I wanted to sort of try and think of answers, like think of, okay, we know all this, so where do we go from here? I mean, even the drug testing thing, like I think, does the athlete get tested by a female or a male? And is it fair to either, like how does that all work? And, you got to keep in mind, even at competitions, that you've got young children and, you've got lots of people there that you're trying to juggle all these rights and responsibilities and, protections and all these sort of things around this whole topic. And how do you do that sensitively and respectfully for all concerned? Even the drug testing thing, it made me think, well, who tests the athlete and who is it fair on, and how does that all work? And and how do you test your testosterone level? Like, do you have a blood test, or because that's pretty full on if you're getting blood tested all the time to be checking, different hormone levels and all that sort of thing.
It's a blood test.
Okay.
And it'd have to be, and we talked about this the other day as well, like, your testosterone like naturally also changes, just for a man. Like if I don't sleep for 2 days, I think I can drop in testosterone like 40%.
Wow.
And fluctuates throughout the day.
Fluctuates, yeah.
Yeah, right. But I'm just saying, like, I can, manually do it by just, very much hamstringing myself by not sleeping. So testosterone for a male, like, does fluctuate a fair bit. So you almost want very regular blood tests to make it, to get a consistent picture of what someone's testosterone is leading into a competition.
And I think, and I've heard that even with, with female drug tests, that they keep a track of your testosterone levels and where you're at normally, because if you move up significantly, but you're still under a limit, that apparently that can raise questions or something, which, I never, saw a piece of paper that said this is your testosterone level or anything like that. So I'm not sure if that just happens in the background or how that works. But
Yeah,
But yeah,
unfortunately, you don't know anything. If you get tested, so for those that don't know, when you get tested, the only inkling that you know that you didn't, test positive is that you don't hear anything.
yeah.
They don't like ring you up 3 weeks later, like, hey, good news, like you're good.
And you just got to remember, if you hear the word positive, it's not positive. It's really bad.
Yeah, that too.
So when people go, come on, let's be positive, not too positive. Actually, my first ever drug test from weightlifting, I got a certificate sent to me to say it was negative. And I remember looking at it just for a little bit going, oh, hang on. Oh, yeah, that's cool.
That's that little blue piece of paper, right, that you used to get. Is that the one you got?
I actually got a certificate. Like, I actually got like a thing from ASADA, and it said, I think they actually used to send them every time you went to negative, because I remember getting a few of them.
Yeah, I've got a few of them still in my folder actually here. So yeah, I do remember getting them as well. It's like, congratulations, you're clean, baby.
They don't do that anymore, right?
No, there's too many. They do
because you guys suck. That's why.
That makes sense.
Well, I was tested right after the Commonwealth Games at my house, and I was 3.5 months pregnant. And I said to her, look, you know before my parents know, but I'm pregnant. And she's like, oh, that's so great. And I said, so if you could not tell anybody, but if you could make a note that if my hormone levels are weird,
all over the place.
but then I still got tested at I think I was 5.5 months. They came to test me again at my home at 8:00 at night, and I was like, yeah, so if you could just tell people, like, apparently you can't just say I'm pregnant and they go away, because anyone could say that. So they could still test you, but then apparently there was another incident in Australia where someone said I'm pregnant, and so they left, and they were like, yeah, you can't just say that because you might not be. And anyway, so they stopped testing me after that, so that was good. But I mean, even even the good for the baby. Even just reading, like, it is a really interesting topic to read. And because I'm not lifting at the moment and I'm not sort of involved myself, I'm not sort of, I don't want people to think I'm pushing an agenda or anything. Obviously, I want it to be fair. I do want inclusion as well. But I feel like we need to be careful with how we do that, so as not to exclude young or doesn't even have to be young, but we can't exclude people from the sport for fear of safety or whatever, or fairness and stuff. I mean, another example, my 9-year-old was playing in a soccer team with all predominantly boys, because there's not enough girls at the moment to have a team, and she got kicked in the face by this boy on accident, but the ball just hammered her in the face, and that was the last time she ever played soccer, and I don't think she'll ever play ever again. Now that's just an example of one time where, even as a 9-year-old, she goes, I'm playing against boys. And I go, it doesn't matter. We're going to get a girls team. I think my 5-year-old might not want to play in the future because there's not enough girls at the moment to have a team. And, she might think she's not as good because she doesn't get the ball very much, because all the boys get the ball, and, a lot of the very high energy boys get the ball, and they have it a lot. So my job now for them is to say, hey, you could be really good, but you're playing with some of the boys who they might be they're a bit faster than you or whatever. So even at this level, like, I'm seeing the very, very early stages of trying to say to them, you can be very good. You got to do the training. We'll find you a girls team so it can be fair, and da. So I think, like, we just need to keep in mind, that there's all, the Serena and Venus story of them playing tennis against the number 203, 203rd ranked male player, and he smashed them 6-1, 6-2. There's countless examples. And yes, it doesn't mean that every transgender athlete will beat every female athlete. That's not the case. I know what it feels like to be, 10 years and be the elite in my country, to be the top female, and to watch this teenage boy come into the gym and seriously, after 6 months, be almost matching my weights. And I just think, what's the point? I've coached, I've talent ID'd, like, I've had these boys where I do throwing coaching, and this, these Islander boys turned up, and I was like, oh, you were like this big last year and now you're this big. And, I showed them how to do a power clean. This one boy did a triple power clean on 100 the second time he touched the bar. And he's going to go play rugby. But, it's just so hard when you see countless examples to go, how, like, what do we do? So, I mean, there was, the case-by-case basis, that's what some people say. But I mean, I suppose the thing with the case-by-case basis is that it could be argued that you're just unfair against that person because it's not a rules. The whole thing is rules for everyone. That's what a lot of people say. But as soon as you talk about a case-by-case, well, what do you do? I mean, I feel like, if you've got an athlete that is beating all the women, you've either got the option of someone that's going to beat women or be in the top 3, or you got someone that's going to be in, another race and maybe not do as well. I mean, like what are the answers? And someone talked about weighted vests for someone that's in a sprint race, or a handicap division, or, but in this article particularly, it just talks about, we talk about men's divisions could be eliminated and replaced with open divisions. Any athlete could be competing in that division, but then transgender athletes could be evaluated on a case-by-case basis based on their athletic ability. Tournament organizer could determine which division is the most fair for them to compete, a women's or an open division. For trans women athletes, at issue is their athletic ability, not their womanhood. If a tournament organizer determines that a trans woman athlete is too good to compete against other women because of her biological advantage, requiring her to compete in an open division does not undermine her humanity. Instead, it acknowledges and takes seriously that she identifies as a woman, but that respect for the principles of fair competition requires that she not be allowed to compete in the women's division. While whatever decision is made is unlikely to make all competitors happy, this approach seems to be the most fair and feasible given the relatively small number of transgender athletes and the unique circumstances of each athlete. So this person, in this article is trying to, like they say, it's not having a high testosterone that automatically makes you a better athlete. But, when some people say, well, why don't we replace gender divisions with ability levels? But then you are going to hinder female sport, I think. So, So it is.
I mean, what about like we haven't really touched on there is like just, and maybe the low numbers of transgender athletes available, but just a separate division altogether.
Yeah,
Men's, women's,
absolutely.
transgender. And then, I mean, if you need to water it down further, transgender, male to female, female to male, have separate categories there as well. But it doesn't seem to be as big an issue, obviously, with male to female the other way around. Female to male transitions, because for obvious reasons that we've just outlined, there are just biological differences. We discussed the other day the Ash, you sort of really brought this up, was the difference between the fairness versus performance versus inclusivity thing, and we had a pretty robust discussion around that. By the sounds of it, sounds like the Olympics needs to work out what the hell it's supposed to stand for, because if the IOC doesn't even know and is trying to pass the buck back down to national level organizations, that's insane, because then what happens when it comes to the Olympics and international competitions again? Suddenly it's like, oh, fuck, well, this country allowed this and this country didn't allow this. So now you've got transgender from here. This country over here doesn't agree with it. I mean, that's trash. That's just them passing the buck completely.
And there's a difference between the the grassroots level and encouraging everyone, because we all know that sport is good for our mental health. So obviously transgender athletes should be able to do something and do sport and compete and everything. I mean, I would agree with an open category, a separate category.
Separate, yeah.
And I think if there is, like, if there was a race, in America at some college level where there was, 2 transgender athletes that beat everyone by a lot, and then the women came next, and some girls lost, they didn't get a scholarship because only the top 3 got a scholarship to a college and all that sort of thing. So I feel like if it was a school competition and there was a transgender athlete running in a school race, I feel like you would still need to give the top 3 girls the ribbon, and the transgender athlete a ribbon. Like you can't. I feel like you can't let a girl, a biological female, miss out in a competition. And I suppose So that
happened fairly recently. Some track events in the US, I think, from memory. A transgender athlete competed in women's track over there and absolutely destroyed the women. And there was a massive backlash from that, because the girls were not happy at all, as you can understand. But just back on the Laurel thing, like, how many female New Zealand athletes missed an opportunity to compete at Tokyo as a super because the transgender athlete was put in their stead? Like, it's 3-4 years until the next Olympics. That may be the end of their career already, and they've just missed that one window to compete at the Olympic level. That's
we can go through so many Oceanas and throw so many just events through our area where I know plenty of females in the heavier categories that have competed and lost positions, lost medals, that lost their type of stuff, and they've trained their whole lives for that type of thing. So,
so you want to talk about fairness? Where's the fairness there? Like, okay, inclusivity for a single transgender athlete, okay, that's fine. It's all progressive and all the rest of that. But what about the poor girls that have been left behind? Then that's trash.
I think make the distinction between inclusivity and fairness. You need to put a criteria on fairness, and especially at the international competitions. I think we've just got to go back to it. It's like, what do you actually want?
Mm-hmm.
With the clarity,
and that's definitely for the higher ups to sort out. The IOC is as we were saying the other day, Ash, when we were chatting and all of us are chatting, it's the higher ups that need to filter down exactly what happens for everything to come up. There needs to be a clear way forward for everyone to know from, like you were saying, Deb, grassroots to build up to that level, but it has to filter down from the top so everyone knows exactly which way they're going, because that's what's going to build the fairness for everyone. But as you were saying, Ash, sorry?
Yeah, I was just like, it's quite literally their jobs. Like, they need to, you can't just be like, oh, it's for national level. All right, so New Zealand says it's sweet. Perfect. They're leaving the same rules as currently is. For Oceania competition, the other countries are like, no, it's a different level of tests when it comes to that. And then what's the protocol for testing there? Like, I'm saying testosterone. And then when it comes to actual testing, what if they've got different levels that are allowed between different trans athletes in actual competitions? You can't have it at a national level. Absolutely insane.
Just on that point as well, like, you'd probably want to take into account that, you know, for example, Australia, a lot of the board on like for the AWF is not really paid, you know, so you're moving like the buck from, you know, the IOC, who have a board that is paid, you know, quite a greater amount of money, which means that they're going to have more time and this is going to be their full-time job, to, you know, a small sport that is struggling just to get funding for their athletes and funding to even just run.
I don't think you understand, Andy. The people at the IOC have to account for all their bribes. They need to work with their accountant, make sure they got that money coming in, stacking that.
They're just little Pablo Escobars. They just put all their money and burn it. I was actually thinking, Deb, I thought you were on the committee for Australia and you're basically the monopoly woman of Australia. You got the little monocle on the top and stuff like that. You're on Fair Street and everything like that. But obviously I was very thrown off about how it works these days. But in saying what we were, do you feel, Andy, you made this comment the other day, and I think Ash made as well, Deb, do you feel like as a society, we're starting to lose the actual idea, especially in a sporting society? Are we starting to lose the idea of the knowledge of what it is to be a female and what it is to be a male in sport?
Oh, well, I read, I think it's Senator Chandler. I follow her and she's in Tasmania, and she asked every MP in the country, what is a female? Like, what do you say is a woman? And lots of them actually didn't return her, like either said, I can't say it, or they actually couldn't articulate to her what a woman is. Or they said, please don't ask something that's offensive. And I was like, oh my goodness, are we really at that stage where a woman is now being a woman or saying what a woman is offensive? Like, I don't.
Taboo subject.
What's that?
Like, why is that a taboo subject? Like, why? How could that be? Like, again, you got tested. You got tested to find male or female. It's quantifiable. So it can't be an eerie, murky thing if we have quantifiable objectives for it. And I think we use testosterone, because that's what it seems like it's going towards. That's what they sport. The markers of testosterone is the differentiator between male and female. But again, there's massive issues with that, and it's a spectrum, and it changes. And like, do drugs, you're off the Richter scale, or you just have a genetic disadvantage. You're at a completely different level. It's a ridiculous distinction. We already have a quantifiable thing, but it's like, nah, get rid of that. It's because it's taboo now.
I think what I was going to say before, I think, Luke, to what you were saying about the open category, one thing that I've read is what some people might push back on is that transgender athletes, it wants to be included as a female. So that's a difference, is that not all transgender athletes would be happy with an open category, and that it wouldn't sit comfortably with a lot of people, it wouldn't sit comfortably with some people to say it's an open, like, I am this, I'm not this, I'm this. So I think that's where, unfortunately, when you're talking about elite performance, yes, I think it would be, you can't say it's fairness and include a transgender athlete to into a women's category and when we don't even, like you said, Ash, we can't quantify all these different things, and there's so many varying factors and all that, we can't always feel like it's a fair playing field. But then to say, yes, an open category would be good, I would imagine that there would be some, I think the end of this article on the conversation, that piece says that it's not about a person's womanhood, but I think a lot of transgender athletes would say that they're not a male anymore. They are a female. So I think that's an issue. So I think that's what the MPs say.
And this is the problem, because it's by whose definition?
Well, I think that's the issue in general, is that we're arguing over two different things. We're arguing over the social construct of, gender identity, as well as the biological differences of gender. And I think it's probably like a problem with the English language as well, is that we have only two words to describe the same thing at a stage now where people are evolving. So like you have the social identity, which is I'm a man, I'm a woman. And then you also have there's a disparity between the genders that is just naturally occurring as well. And we're finding it hard because we can't separate the two as sport, as people. The other thing, though, to go back to the fairness in sport thing, is next week, we'll be dealing with the exact same issue, but in a very different way. And I don't want to come across as bigoted by saying this, but the Paralympics is a clusterfuck of, of dealing with, you're amputated from this point down, so now you can't compete in this specific category. And we're having issues with people that are different, but not to the extent that the sport allows, if that makes sense. And I think that is if they've had many years to sort of figure out the rules there, and maybe we just haven't had enough time. And potentially, as much as it affects other athletes within the sport, maybe Laurel being involved at this point is good, because it's raising the questions and it's forcing us to actually sort out what is going to be the way of moving forward.
Well, 2014 World Championships, there was a transgender athlete in one of the lighter categories, I think a 48 or a 53 or something. So there's been an athlete or two before Laurel, but I think maybe Laurel just brought more media and stuff because and being a New Zealander as opposed to this athlete that I think actually the lifter won a medal in the males category, a world championship or something before, and then came back, was a year or two after, was in the female and got the bronze, I think in 2014. I just can't remember the name of the athlete, but so it's been around for a little bit, but then I think it was like you said, now it's an issue. We actually need to discuss it and deal with it in some way. I mean, no, I've lost what I had before. So.
Do you feel like we were just saying it's moved so quickly? It's almost been very much rushed into being the situation that it is now. And like Andy said, it's not necessarily a bad thing in a way. It's not necessarily a good thing in another way. It's really dependent on how you look at it more than anything else. But these issues need to be sorted out. And Andy, using the Paralympics as a bit of an idea process on exactly how they've done things to make that inclusive could be something that the IOC need to look into, something like this as well, how they go about that type of situation. But they also do need to just sit back and just look at it from plain and simple inclusive.
I think for a long time as well, they kind of avoided the issue, and then all of a sudden, in wider society, it's kind of accelerated in the last 5 years. It's really become a topical thing, the whole transgender, what is gender and all the rest of it thing is sort of, and now sport is kind of scrambling to keep up. So they've kind of rushed it a little bit and haven't really thought it out because they're but back on the Paralympic thing, interesting, forgetting what happened with Oscar Pistorius afterwards, but as weren't they discussing having
That's
him?
what it was.
Yeah. Weren't they discussing having him in what do you call it? The regular Olympics, if you like.
Yes.
But then they said his artificial advantage by wearing those blades was then going to be too much for regular athletes. Andy?
I just wanted to also point out that I'm in no way saying that someone who is transgender is, you know, like I'm not likening them to, I'm not likening them to a Paralympian or anything. So please don't take that out of context.
No, we're discussing
there are issues with inclusivity in both. Yeah. In both, like both
are examples of outliers, Andy.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
but yeah, like that Oscar Pistorius thing is a crazy example where they, you know, they said no. Like,
he's a cyborg.
Yeah,
he's just
you're basically you're the $6 million man.
He's a man.
Cannot do this. You've murdered countless women. Like, you're not going to be able to do.
He's a supervillain. This is awesome.
He's Nixon off Futurama.
No, he's a girl off Kingsman.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So our lockdown's finished anyway. So. but that's exactly what I was going to talk about.
That must be very nice.
Yeah, thanks for that, South Australia and Queensland.
But because in that article that I was reading, it said Pistorius, Chand, and Semenya, and I was like, oh, that's right. Yep. So, you know, on a case by case basis. But I feel like, I don't know. I mean, I suppose there was Laurel was one athlete. There was the other weightlifter I've talked about. So, I mean, do we do a case by case basis, or is that going to be to, like, again, catch up?
Like, it's been a couple of years. You have, like, we can name 5 off the top of our head. Like, surely we can figure it. Like, if it's case by case, I think we can do it. Like, like it doesn't seem like this insurmountable thing to just like, okay, what it is. It's case by case. We're going to figure it out. Here's the general guidelines that we're going to be ranking this off. This is the basic criteria. Maybe testosterone's part of it. Maybe how long it's been since transition's a part of it. Maybe past performance is part of it. I don't know, other things like that. And then you just like,
but like, what do you do? Sit there and go, okay, if you were trash at weightlifting as a dude, you can transition. That's fine because you won't be a threat for medals and keep other women out. Like,
well, if you've never done weightlifting and then you transition and then you're just like, and you fulfill the criteria, it all depends on the case by case basis.
Yeah, but if notwithstanding what Deb said earlier, because there's obviously, even from birth, there's differences between boys and girls, even as kids, before they hit adolescence, there's strength and size differences already. I mean, before I was 12 years old, I mean, obviously a bit of an outlier here. I'm 6'7" now, Deb, to give you some scope, but I was 6'3" when I was 11.
His camera is not just close.
Yeah, I was going to say.
He's just big.
It's actually a kilometre away from him.
I was 6'3" when I was 11 years old. There are not 6'3" girls walking around very commonly at 11 years old. Then I hit adolescence, and now I'm 6'7" and 170 kilo athlete. Obviously, adolescents didn't do that exclusively, but like, if you know, and the majority of transitioning, I am assuming, occurs post adolescence because adults make these decisions. I'd like to think the benefits are already there. The benefits are already there, and it's like. So when do you say it's okay, Ash? When do you go, oh, case by case? Well, this person's already had all the benefits of having testosterone their whole bloody life.
Case by case can just be like, okay, no, that can be case by case. Like,
yeah, but then and so then you work out who decides that, and then do they sue you because of discrimination? And I do. It really needs to be thought out. I think we can do it. As a panel.
I agree.
Yeah. See, this is why we invited you on. We were going to solve this and then send this podcast to the IOC and then, you know, let them just follow through with what our recommendations are.
Like, that'd be pro strongman from a non-tested sport.
Yeah.
Guy exiled from weightlifting.
Yeah,
mate, it would be fantastic to see what the response
ex-director of the AWF, ex-board member of New South Wales weightlifting, and Ash.
It's what Deb wants to see below her name. She's going to be like, oh, yeah. I've been lumped in with these fuckers. Seriously. You know?
I mean, okay. Rugby Australia did it, right? Rugby said, no, it's too dangerous. You know, hopefully other sports like judo and wrestling and all those other sports, they should follow suit and just say, no, it's too dangerous, or, you know, but then unfortunately in our sport, you know, we're lifting a heavy weight, but then you're talking about the power and the innate, you know, the strength and all the benefits of that. But then you talk about power sports.
Keep it down in there.
Keep going, lift the weight.
That's just her coaching.
Yeah, that's coming.
That's Michael Keelan. You're
not allowed to leave unless you lift 10 more kilos.
and my 2-year-old goes, burpees. Yeah, Yeah, but then you got, then you think about which power sports benefit from, an increase in all those factors. Well, then you're talking about almost every other sport. I mean, archery, not as much, but it's just, that's the hard thing. There's just so few sports that require strength speed. Like I always say when I do these talks, I say to kids, like, I started weightlifting because you have to be strong. So what sports can you think of where it's good to be weak? And then I sit there and go, oh, no sport, even like table tennis, all these things, like
curling.
Yeah.
Curling.
Yeah, no,
Curling or
they every sport. Every sport. Every sport.
Yeah, do you feel like social media has played a massive role in the way things are going so quickly forward? Do you feel like media plays a massive part in the trajectory of the positive and the negative to the situation? Because what we were saying the other day was when Laurel had bombed out of the snatch section, half the media had left the room when that happened. Like, I could only imagine as an athlete, again, both sides of the spectrum here, she's being outcasted by everyone anyway. They're going to outcast her more because of that as well. But I can only imagine what it'd be like after going out and doing your 3 snatches, you've got a packed house full of media, and then you come out for your clean jerks and there's no one.
Well, also, just so quickly, also the way they used Laurel as a marketing tool with the IWF
absolutely.
on their social media, Deb, as well, in that when they announced the heavyweights for the women's supers this year, they had Laurel as the face image that they had up first, not Lee Wen, who's effectively Lasher of female weightlifting, who's out here putting up absurd numbers. They use a transgender athlete. Now, tell me that wasn't on purpose, because the bloody post went viral. IWF posts don't go viral. And the amount of comments, negative or otherwise, underneath, it gave it so much traction, they nearly broke the bloody internet purely by using that image. That was entirely strategic. I don't care what anyone says. So, they're not silly in that regard. They're obviously used it to try and get some more eyes on weightlifting as well.
Yeah, I hadn't seen that post, but yeah, I'm probably the only person in the country that didn't. But
didn't miss much.
Yeah. What was the start of what you said? Because I forgot what you.
It was more about
basically. He's basically saying that more to the issue, the broader issue is that we're politicizing it as well, or that IWF is using it as a vehicle for propaganda.
Well, that would come into account.
And just the media impact
decision.
Yeah.
Like, if the media is down talking, it's going to make it harder for someone to go no, because they've basically pulled up everyone to support yes, rather than them going no, this is the way it's going to be. And it's hard. I get it. When you in society, social media and media is everything. We're doing a podcast that is going to go up on social media, right? Like, it's one of those things.
Talk about going viral.
Oh, stop it, you. It's just one of those things where we do have to live with it in a way, but I wanted to get your thoughts on what you thought. Do you feel like that is a big driving factor as well?
Yeah, look, I think a big part of even like law making, I mean, when I did my law degree, a lot of it, a lot of progressive laws and things that change is based on society now. And I mean, women can own property now because, our thoughts on society about women being able to own a house is has
not
changed.
all progression's good, is it? Sorry.
Oh dear. Okay. So there is that factor that, change, lawmakers need to listen to, society, but I mean, there has to be the ability to, discuss, and, some people, loudest voices win sometimes, but I think that's where I don't want, I don't like seeing people go so hard on one side without being able to listen to, as an accredited mediator. I don't like to, I like to be able to go, hey, keep this in perspective, keep that in perspective. And I just feel like, that is, you can still get results from that. You don't have to have the combat way of arguing for and against. So I just feel like we need to go, oh yeah, so keep in mind this and keep in mind that. But yeah, like after my competition at the Gold Coast, I was on cloud 9. I think I was ranked 7 or 8, and I actually came 4th, and my family was there. It was just like, it felt like the end of my career. My hip was killing me. Like, it was just my moment to be at 5 Commonwealth Games. No other weightlifter's done that. I was so pumped. I was in tears after Glasgow because I should have got a medal, and by kilo I missed out, and then I was nearly in tears at Gold Coast because I came 4th, and it was amazing. And all I was asked about was my comments about Laurel, and I just stood there and said, I am at my 5th Commonwealth Games. I have my 2 daughters watching. Like, I just brought it back to me because this was my competition. It was about my performance. It was about the hard work that I'd put in. I should have had a shoulder reconstruction and I didn't because we couldn't afford it. All these things, we just bought a house and we were about to move. Like, all these things were happening and I just didn't want my moment taken. And for me to finish my career happily, I just had to bring it back to me and I didn't want to comment on all that again. So at least, like, I have made a few comments here and there, you know, on, you know, to friends or, you know, on different random Save Women's Sport posts and things like that. But I've tried to put it in perspective that, you know, people that are going hard, whichever way they're coming at it, I feel like sometimes it's actually a great thing that I've got here where I can say, hi, I know what it feels like to compete against a transgender athlete. I know, and I've got 3 daughters that I'm looking towards their future as well. I can speak from all these angles, and so can I put it in perspective? And can you think about this issue? I mean, of course, I'm concerned about the health of a transgender athlete as well, you know, mental and physically. And you know, of course, we want. You know, I know how important it is for me to exercise and to, you know, be screaming up my, you know, up the hill trying to exercise and get it all out so that I'm, you know, a normal mum with my children in lockdown. And it's so important for your mental health. So I don't want to see anyone suffer in that way, but I also want to make sure that we can keep elite sport as elite sport and have it fair. And I think, you know, I'm sure we've all had a competition where we've known that, you know, amazing athlete that's come along and that, you know, like the Simone Biles of gymnastics or the, you know, the whoever it is in your sport and your field.
Luke Reynolds of strongman.
Yes, Luke Reynolds of strongman that's come along, and you just and you just know that
they should leave the sport. They should retire.
And you just know that, like, you're not going to win. So you just go, I'm going to do my best, but I'm probably not going to be the world champion. And it's okay. But when that athlete is
that must be how Yannick feels.
Wouldn't be a podcast without a shot at Yannick.
Yeah, so it's hard to take as a female when you know when you feel like it's not fair. Like my parents used to always say throughout my career, oh, don't worry about that whatever athlete in the world, you know, they're probably on drugs, don't worry about it. And I just go, Mum, you can't say that. Dad, you can't say that. And then after, you know, 2 tested positive and I got 6th place, I was like, oh, well, maybe. But as an athlete, you don't want to think about that stuff. Whereas, and same as the Gold Coast, when I lined up to do my comp, I was focused on my own competition. But it's sort of now after the fact where you go, okay, let's actually, I can think about fairness now because I'm not in the thick of my training. Because otherwise I'll be doing my training down at Cougars or down at whatever club I'm at going, wow, I can train my backside off, but it's never going to change. You know what I mean? Like, you can't have that thought process of like, I'm never going to win this because of this other athlete. You have to just keep on.
It's funny what you said there before, Deb, about the post-Com Games media, and their only focus was on the drama of the Laurel factor. Because I don't know if you caught the press conference the other day with the medalists from the Supers in the women's.
I read about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and they asked a few questions about it, and you know those
ease them into it before they give the damning
right, and then they go, oh, here it comes, and they dropped it on them, and all 3 girls just sat there completely silent, and then Sarah Robles, after about 10 seconds, just leaned forward and said, no, thank you. It was like perfect response from the girls because obviously it made them uncomfortable. They didn't want to talk about it. And the focus should not be on an athlete, male, female, transgender, or otherwise, that's bombed because it has no bearing on what happened. Those girls won the medals. So it should be all focused on them.
Yeah.
Look, and I was just going to go back, like, it's about the story, right? We first said that the exciting part of the weightlifting is the story and the athletes, like, competing against each other in a fair sport. Do they get? What can they do? But when this is like, I'm going to say it's somewhat like not having it clear if this is a okay or not, or it just always has this, like, the narrative is actually just on this. It's never the athletes, it's never the competition. It's just, this is what we're going to focus on. And that's also, it's not just the medals, it's not the opportunities. It's like the actual, just like the heart of the sport sort of gone, because the heart of the sport is the story and the achievement, and that's gone. And it's sort of scandal. Like, it's not a scandal, but that's sort of what the IWF, what you said before, Luke, of them putting that post up. That's the reason, right? It's called the negative press, which is like, oh, well, let's see how other people feel about this to get a bit of a scandal, get people talking about it. So it's not the right sport anymore. Yep,
because any exposure is good. Negative or otherwise, because it brings eyes onto the sport, irrespective.
It also wasn't, a question. It wasn't a leading question of like, oh, we have an athlete that has changed genders. this could have been potentially very challenging for her. She's come onto the world stage, you know, for the first time at the Olympics to compete in weightlifting and has bombed out. Imagine what the story is behind that. It's, you know, it's actually just, oh, how do you feel about this? Maybe we can catch these lifters.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
In a exactly.
Let's wind them up in a scandal instead.
Let's try and
get some more mileage out of this, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hateful, spiteful medalist.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And obviously, you handled that very well, Deb, when you were obviously doing it, because that would have been something that you, again, most of us here understand that when you're doing media work and stuff like that, you do have to be quite careful on what you say, because they'll take a snippet of what you say and then that's it. And it takes, again, your career being quite long, it took you all that time to be who you are now, but it'll take one word slightly the wrong way around and your whole career is ruined because of that one thing. So, and these are the things that the media and the social media stuff, because it's instant too. It's not like your words taken out of context is in the newspaper 3 days later and then it's gone. It's on social media, it's in everyone's faces, and then people just
and your future employers Google Google. Oh, right, that's that poor Indian Chand, the sprinter. She didn't know that she was an intersex athlete. Apparently, she had never actually had her testosterone levels tested. She was engaged, and then she found out that. Then it came. She didn't actually get a call. I'm pretty sure she wasn't notified about her drug test. And the first thing that she saw was a headline of the newspaper saying, half man, half woman, or whatever the article, whatever the headline was.
Very tactful.
Her fiance left. She's alone, and it's just a big how horrible. What a horrible way to have that come out. And so so I can imagine for Laurel stepping out on the platform. I mean, Laurel competed at a world championship before that and everything. But first Olympics. It must be very, hard, obviously, to come out with all those and know what the cameras are wanting, know what they're wanting all these photos. And so that would be really, really challenging. I'd find that very challenging. And so I feel like, for either way, however you feel about the topic, to know that that's your assignment, to go out there and take photos of every moment of whatever, and to know that some people's reaction are going to be very positive and very negative. It is a very, it's a full on space to be in for anybody. But definitely, I learned very early on that, when you get those questions of, whether the interviewer shoves the, recorder in your face and says, so do you think all your competitors at the Olympics were on drugs? I was really happy with my performance. I've trained really hard. I said, but don't you think how big they looked? I've had a really great lead up to this competition and things have gone really well. You just talk about yourself the whole time and don't answer the question ever.
This is why media training is so important for elite athletes, right?
Yeah, 100%.
They're always trying to catch you out.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Back to Laurel, I think it was really interesting to also watch her reactions to, missed lifts or calls on press outs. She was very, very restrained. So I wonder whether she was also trained or even, told to act in certain ways, or maybe she's just trying to be more stoic as well. But, she'd miss a lift and she'd be like, but you could see she's an athlete as well. You could see that she was, riled up too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was a similar demeanor, that Laurel had. And again, I didn't really see many of other people's lifts at the Commonwealth Games, but I did sort of wonder that too, whether, whether that's just naturally, the demeanor, or whether that's, I'm not sure. I don't even know who was the coach in that situation, or I've sort of lost.
Richie Patterson was New Zealand head coach, and I forget who was coaching it, but I know Richie was there in the background.
Tina was there, wasn't she? Tina Ball.
Yeah. Okay.
Now I'm very aware of me telling you that this would only take an hour to an hour and a half, and we've almost gone 2 hours. So maybe this is maybe this is a good place to sort of call it, shelve the conversation for maybe a latter date. But I just wanted to say thanks, Deb, for coming on and discussing a topic that is quite challenging for athletes to talk about, and two, also being very well read on the topic before coming.
Absolutely.
Anyone with notes is a big win for us.
I did. I actually had 2 pages. See.
Amazing.
Yeah, I can see it. I'm
That's
so
awesome.
It's
impressed.
better than Biggie. Biggie just showed up and it was a mess, and we went for 3 hours, and then we had to do a second part, and it was 5 hours total.
Yeah, and I just had just heaps of random phones in the background. Which leads me into a quick story before I finish. Deb, you owe me.
Been waiting for this.
And I don't know if you remember this, because I think we've only met like once or twice. We haven't really, because I think when you were competing, I was actually still a junior through sort of the early period, and then obviously I went into strongman, but I came back. But when I came back to you, I think you were off having your children at the time, so I was back in. And then by the time Glasgow was coming around, I'd sort of gotten injured and had finished away. So I think I did an Oceania or a state or a national champs with you, state champs with you in Queensland, and we were warming up. You just finished your session, and me, Rob Goldsworthy, and Damo were getting ready for the 105s and over 105s. And I had my phone plugged in against the wall, and you were walking past because you were just finished. She doesn't remember this, but I do.
Oh no! What did I do?
You stepped on my phone.
Oh no!
On my phone, she had the Australian jacket on. She was big dogging it everywhere. And then she stepped on my phone, and she turned out and looked around the room. No, well,
Oh really?
That's okay. It was only a burner phone.
You got the right phone. If anyone you had to get a stomp on someone's phone, make sure it's Biggie's.
Oh, it was hilarious.
Right.
You turned around and looked around the room and gone, and then I'm just there in the corner, like starting to strap up my arms, and you're like, "Is that your phone?" I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "Sorry," and just.
Oh, okay.
Damo was sitting next
That's
to me,
amazing.
strapping up to me. He's just pissed himself up, going, "Shut Damo, fucking."
Well, sorry.
That's the best.
Nah, don't worry, don't stress. It was
Oh,
just
that's funny.
hilarious story because I knew you wouldn't remember it, but I did.
Oh, sorry.
A Biggie never
No,
forgets.
you just came up in my estimation, Deb, and I already thought you were pretty cool anyway.
Oh,
so don't
thanks.
worry.
Oh dear.
Awesome. Awesome.
Deb, where can people find you if they want to, I don't know, follow you on social media or?
I don't give out my address. Sorry. No, just kidding.
Yeah, I would recommend you don't. You continue not to do that.
Yeah, social media. Yeah, because I really like where I live and I don't want to have to move. So, I don't know, like just my name on Facebook and Instagram or whatever. I've got a LinkedIn. I've got a website, but I don't think you can find it. I Google it and it doesn't come up, so I don't know how to get that. So maybe through LinkedIn. I think there's a link to a website or something. I don't know. I'm too
And
busy.
your
Stuff going on.
Instagram is at Deb Lovely Acason, all one word. If people are trying
Is
to
it?
find
Oh,
it.
good. That's it then.
Is it? Yeah. Every time Andy says mine, I'm like, thank God it's him saying it because I don't know what it is.
Just remember when I first signed up to Instagram, I think it was like right before we were at the AIS training camp before the Commonwealth Games, the Gold Coast ones. And I remember I signed up and then was like, you've got somebody following you. And I'm like, oh, that's creepy. Is someone following me? and then I realized what that meant. So
It was
okay.
Biggie. He just wants a new phone.
And Deb is on private as well, so you can't follow her unless she approves you.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is that
Well, luck,
Is that
Biggie.
normal or not?
Oh, it depends. Do you want people seeing what you post?
No, they have to ask first.
Yeah, then that's very normal.
I just did, so feel free to block me. That's
Oh, good. Okay.
Pretty normal.
Oh, I better start posting again. It's been a couple of years.
That's it.
Very good.
Biggie, where
Awesome.
can people find you?
You can find me at the local Checkmates strip joint here in Adelaide. I'm not too hard to find, matey. No, look, I'm on Instagram, Jordan_Biggie or the King of the Circus. My webpage, www.kingofthecircus.com.au. On Facebook, same thing again, Jordan Steffens, King of the Circus.
Love
And
it.
remember, elections are coming up, so Biggie is up
So, taking donations for the Mayor of Adelaide campaign.
These guys are, anyone that listens to this, these guys aren't funny. They're not comedians. They're hilarious, but they're not. They're just
Thanks, Deb.
Thanks for being on. Guys, you can find Raw Barbell Club at Raw Barbell Club on all of our social medias. So that's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, wherever you want to look for us. Make sure you check out our YouTube channel because that's where we post awesome, cool, informational videos about lifting and all of that. If you look on the bottom screen, you can see Ash rocking our new Raw Barbell Club hoodies. So go on and buy one of those. You can find Luke at Luke_Blue Mountain_Reynolds on Instagram, Ash at AshJones_NSS, and you can find me at Train with Andy. Guys, you've been great. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Deb.